Hi, this is Jeremy Adams, writer of the Flash comic book, and welcome to Spoiler Country.
In a world of podcasts, one rises in the night to destroy them all. The elder god in an ocean of noise, the Cthulhu of the airwaves. This is Spoiler Country.
Hello, listeners of Spoiler Country. Today on the show, we have the fantastic writer of The Flash, Jeremy Adams. How's it going, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, it's definitely my pleasure. I'm a big fan of what you're doing with The Flash. I actually really like Wally West, and secret to anyone on the show, I like Wally West better than Barry Allen. So great. I really appreciate what you're doing with the show and with the comic book. So how did you find out you're going to be involved in the Flash comic book as a writer?
So obviously I've been doing writing for a while now, and mostly I've been doing animation, and I'm very steeped in the Warner animation world. So like this year, I came out the Bruce Timm Batman Soul of the Dragon was something I wrote, and I co-wrote a Justice Society World War II animated feature. And so obviously I've been doing superheroes. I'm a huge nerd. I grew up that way. And so what happened was when Dan Didio was running, was over there, he had called in a bunch of animation writers because, Warner Animation has gotten a lot of acclaim for the way that they portray superheroes. And he asked us to come in, and then he was going to do this thing called 5G, which was like this crazy, like leap forward in time, I guess, for the DC universe. And he was like, hey, would any of you guys want to write a comic? Now, I wanted to write a comic since I was a little baby, since I had my underoos. My father actually was an artist for DC back in the day and did a few things back in the day. So, but my parents were divorced early. I'd known about that, and in my head, I think it was more legendary than it was. But it was something I always wanted to do, and because of my experience with animation, they thought I'd make a good fit. Obviously, 5G did not happen. And all my dreams were dashed to the floor. So I was really sad about it. But then my friend Tim Sheridan, who's writing Teen Titans Academy and Shazam, I think he mentioned to the editor he was working for, Mike Cotton, is like, oh, you should talk to Jeremy. And so Cotton called me up and we talked, and he asked me if I wanted to do Future State. Future State was just kind of like the truncated version of 5G. It was like what they ended up doing. And so I did this Black Adam Future State. And at the same time, I did for Jamie Rich a Black Racer reboot for the Superman Worlds at War. So I did these two little mini features in the comic. The Black Adam one was a good 22 issues. And holy cow, I had so much fun. And I think they were like, oh, you got a lot of crazy ideas. I was like, yeah, I do. And so Cotton came to me like, hey, what would you do with the Flash? And I was like, I would like quantum leap him, and I would have him do this stuff. He's like, great. That's better than what we were thinking. So, here you go, And so I started mapping out kind of my first arc for Wally and the return of Wally. And it was really designed, although the mechanism of him jumping into different speedsters, it was kind of a way to acclimate me to the Flash in a way, like in a very real, like ownership way, where I got to kind of like touch on all the characters in a peculiar way. I got to really, create this kind of bond with this character of Wally and just see like, what is it I want from him? What is it I love about him? What is it that drew me to him and that I love in Justice League Unlimited and I love in Mark Waid's run and what was it that made Wally the guy? And so it was a great way to kind of explore that character. And it was funny because I'm rambling, so tell me if you want me to stop. But Wally, in a way, as a fan, it's like, oh man, he's been a human pinata for so long. Like he's been beaten on. And so kind of the way that I thought about it was like, no one's going to touch the puppy anymore. He's going to be fine. He's going to be great. We're going to have adventures. And so I think people have noticed that I have a lot of earnestness in what I'm writing, and a lot of just, it's almost a throwback comic because it's much more just adventure based and having exciting, things happen and bringing in his family. I mean, the truth is, I wish it was like it came out twice monthly, because I feel like there's just so much ground to cover and so much stuff I want to tell. And I, as the writer, I'm like, oh man, I got to wait for a month, So I don't know if that answered your question, but I love getting to know this character, and now created this kind of like, I love this character, and they were like, how long do you want to write this for? And I'm like, until you kick me off. So keep buying it, guys, please. I don't want to leave.
So if anyone from DC Comics is listening, twice a month on the Flash, make it happen.
Yeah. Oh gosh, so great. So great.
So the use of Wally West as the primary Flash, was that a you decision or a DC decision asking you to do that?
No, what I recall was like when Cotton was like, hey, we're thinking about bringing back Wally West, as the Flash, because Barry Williamson was going to use Barry in Infinite Frontier. And this is a perfect opportunity to kind of like put Wally to the front again. And I just had to figure out how I wanted to do it. And not only is it just, I want to bounce through speedsters, but obviously I wanted to address the elephant in the room in a way, which was the Heroes in Crisis moment. And, I did get pushback on that. It was like, some people just didn't want to talk about it at all and ignore it. And I didn't think that was fair, because I wanted to do it. But one of my favorite things in I love quote unquote retconning, especially if it fits within the context of what happens. And the main idea I had was like, the reality is that the Flash moves so fast that there could be these entire adventures that happen in a blink of an eye. And that was kind of the thing that like hit me. It's like, oh, and trying to build up to this moment that is super contentious within fandom, and not diminish it as a piece of art, what they did, and just say, no, but this is the other story that happened inside that story. It was a weird needle to thread, and I hope I did okay. But again, I'm new to this. Well,
I think you did a great job. One of the things that it kind of reminded me of, going back 20-something years, because I've been a fan for comics for a very long time, is the Green Lantern Rebirth, when Jeff Johns had to rehabilitate Hal Jordan before he could use them. And it was a question of how to do it respectfully and still do it so readers would accept. And I feel like you did that same thing with Wally West. You managed to recognize what happened in Heroes in Crisis, regardless if you were for it or against it, doesn't matter. But also make it so Wally West on some level is rehabilitated and you can be forgiven for what happened in that storyline. Right. I mean, that's how I felt. And again, it's comic books. That's the fun of a lot of comic books. A lot of it is, sometimes people will dig a hole and it's like, it's like, oh yeah, I got to get out of this hole. I always think back to like, in the X-Men comics when Dark Phoenix died, and then, Madeline Pryor. I mean, this is, for those that don't know, Jean Grey died in the most epic run of comic books probably that ever has been. Yeah.
And then I remember years later they introduced Madeline Pryor, and like, we didn't have internet. We're looking around, everybody's going, did you see that she looks just like Jean Grey? Like, yeah, like something's going on, and then they slowly start chipping away at like what had actually happened. And I love that, because I'm sure that someone years from now, after they finally fire me from this job, will go back and change it even more. That can be kind of the fun. But for me, it was about finding Wally's voice and finding out, just remembering why people like Wally and what was it that made people excited about him. And it's not because he has super speed, because there's like 12 people that have super speed, and it is more of that everyman, and I always feel like that earnestness and that hopefulness. And I feel like, as far as characters go, I'm writing it from a very familiar voice. Like, I have 2 kids. Wally has 2 kids, trying to, live life and pay bills and all that sort of thing. And except I feel like with the character of Wally, he was a fan of the Flash. Like, that was his thing, and he dreamed of that stuff. So him getting those powers is such a different vibe than somebody that accidentally got those powers. Like, he's been wanting these powers. He's been wanting to be the Flash for so long, so the fact that he gets it, and it's like, it's a little more fun for him, I think.
Now, the one thing interesting is Wally West, so I think it's just different than almost any other superhero, and especially with your run, is that Wally West, this is actually the first time, I think, I might be wrong, that Wally West has been the Flash about the same time as Barry Allen has existed as the Flash, because before, Barry Allen was taken out of the storyline before.
Yeah. So I think that's right. But you know what? It's whatever. I mean, so, how many Supermans are there now? I don't know.
Well, my question to that is, how do you differentiate a Wally West story from what it would be a Barry Allen story, and what is quintessentially a Wally West Flash story that's different?
Well, if I had the opportunity to explore Barry a little bit, Barry is, to me, a scientist. Barry is, he also is like kind of square-jawed hero. Like, I think he does these things very straight down the middle. Like, I love the fact that he is kind of a detective and a CSI, and like, he can kind of think about that. And he is more, I don't know, just logical about that stuff. I feel like Wally is much more like seat of his pants, and Wally is having everything Wally does. He kind of has a smile while he does it. If Barry is brains, Wally is heart. And that's both great. You can tell great stories with both of that. But I think that Wally is much, I mean, again, Wally is such an outlier of most heroes because he's married, because he has kids. It's such a different, because they never really like canonized, like, this is his skill set as a worker. It's like, he definitely is a different type of person. And I think he approaches problems differently. I mean, one of the things, obviously, in the last issue you saw is the fact that he's not just going to bludgeon a villain to death. If he sees the opportunity, he's going to see, how can I empathize with this person, especially with all that he's gone through. And by the way, that's another wonderful thing that happened because of Heroes in Crisis, because they pull him out of the universe, because he lost his kids, because he lost all this thing, and then he gets them all back. It's like, this guy knows the lowest of the low point where people don't remember he existed in like, his friends don't. It's like, and then he gets that back. And I tried to make that, with that adage, that AA adage, like, don't leave before the miracle happens. Like, I think that is very much who he is. It's like, there can always be a brighter day tomorrow. And I love that about him. Whereas Barry, and I've written Barry in besides comic books. My first Lego movie, I think, was a Lego Flash movie with Dwight Schultz play the Reverse Flash in it. And it was this great Lego thing. And he was more, there's this blending of Wally and Barry's personality that happens in other media, because I think Wally has a much more fun, quick sensibility. But when I wrote Barry for the JSA that I did with my friend Megan, we wrote him he was a little bit nerdy. He was like, let me change this. I know the sun's going to be this way, because he knows science and he kind of nerds out. He's like Bill Nye the Science Guy with like powers, And I love that. I think that's, and so with any of these characters, I feel like as a writer, you have to find the hook, the voice that you can write to. But, I haven't had other than, and you saw it in my first run, because Barry, they were solving the problem. Like Barry, Mr. Terrific, and Ollie, to a lesser degree, but they were trying to solve the problem. They were trying to figure out, how do we get Wally back? And you could see the train of thought. And issue to issue, it wasn't like, we figured out the problem, and now it's like, we were totally wrong. We have to go back and figure out this again. Oh, no, we got another piece of data, so we have to go back. Meanwhile, Wally's just running. Like, I gotta save this thing. I gotta, Gold Beetle Spear. We got to do this. So I don't know. That's
and I will say what we just brought up, issue 773. That's the scene with Heatwave and the Flash really was a great touching moment that I really do think differentiated from almost any other comic book you would read, because I think every reader had the same expectation that I did, that right at the end you're gonna have the massive Heatwave Flash fight that you're building towards, and then the fact that you didn't do it and you kind of subverted that was so very clever, and it did feel so much like Wally West.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm lucky that I have people around me too that, you know, Mike Cotton was helping me with that. And as we dived into it, it was like, oh, this is the right ending for this. And it's just one of those things where, oh man, there's so much I want to do. You know, so you know, the way I look at it is like my favorite television shows, even like we had talked about Supernatural or Buffy or X-Files. One of the things I love that they did was they would do a few episodes that were kind of standalone, and then they do a few episodes that dealt with the bigger arc, and then they would go back to a few standalones. And that's kind of the way that I'm looking at this run on the Flash. Like I hint at a bigger thing that will, like the mysterious thing flying through space, you know, hopefully will lead to a bigger arc. And then after that arc, hopefully we can come back and do a little something else, you know, and just start threading in those things for the Flash. And that, because that's what excites me about the Flash, is he is, you know, timey-wimey, you know, it's right. This guy can go anywhere. I mean, that's the fun. To me, when they asked me to do the Flash, I was like, yeah. And we talked about what type of stories we should tell. And I was very much like, I want it to be weird. Like I wanted to go all over the place. And there was kind of a compromise, like, okay, but as long as we do some grounded ones too, it's like, okay, great. We can do some grounded ones too. And then can we go back to being weird? You know? and that's, I mean, it's a dream come true for a comic fan. Like I got Kevin McGuire to draw, you know, part of a book where they're jumping to the super, like it's like it doesn't get better than that for me.
Well, yeah, and I like I said, I really like what you do. And as you mentioned, the Blade introduced in 772 that's hurling through space. I really want to ask you a question about that, because you wrote a very interesting caption, and I'm gonna read it to the fans to the listeners who may not have read it, but hopefully they will. You wrote, "And with it, the fate of many worlds rests on whoever is unworthy enough to wield it." Interesting that you put in the word unworthy enough to it. So how important is that one extra prefix un to the storyline?
I think it's very important. I think it's very important. And, you know, and for years from now, when I can go back and talk about some of the other things we wanted to do with it, you know, it changed. I've had this happen to me a couple of times where I have this really kind of like big high concept idea, and then somebody else beats me to the punch over down the road. But this does play out, you know, very soon. And I'm excited to kind of like go on the next journey with Wally to see what that is. And obviously some of it's spoiled because there's solicits, and I'm sure people have seen the solicits for my favorite covers we've done probably so far, which is I think Flash 778. I think it's that one. I think the solicits for that crack me up. I think with the Wally you're going to get adventure, you're going to get excitement. The tongue is firmly pushed into the cheek. The artists that I get to write for are just so dang good. It would be a disservice to just have two people talking in a room, honestly. It's like, you know, and I've been working a lot, you know, and I got spoiled very early on, because with Black Adam Future State, the artist was Fernando Passarin. And I don't know if you're familiar with his work, but it just, it feels like, you know, like back in the day when Jim Lee was drawing X-Men, and you're like, oh my gosh, you know, and so they're sending me these pencils, and I'm just like, I am such a schlub. Like compared to what inkers and colorists and these artists do, I am like the low man. I mean, they really are magic people. Yeah. You know? So I'm grateful.
Well, the other thing, and I kind of want to know about this. So in issue 773, okay,
Yep.
You have an appearance by the Yellow Lanterns, and it says in one of the boxes, an editorial note, that to check out Green Lantern Annual #1, which has not come out yet. 773 came out before the annual.
Yeah,
so,
I didn't know that.
So is there something that happens in the annual that
I don't
to be known prior to yours?
I don't know. I'll be very transparent here. I had written it and I was like, hey, I need a couple Green Lanterns for this scene. And then I was told, no, you can use these two people and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, what's going on over at Green Lantern World? Like it was just one of those things where I'm like, oh gosh, I got to catch up on these books too. So I think, it's so hard. I mean, it's no secret that, there's been many upheavals, at DC and whatever, but I think they're doing I really feel like they're moving and grooving, and you can feel the continuity kind of coming together a little bit. And the annuals will be out, I think, next week or something. So, yeah, maybe it was, I don't know the real deal about that, except that that's kind of what I was told.
well, the fact that you have the Yellow Lanterns in the issue at all seems to suggest that fans of anyone who's a fan of the Flash and Green Lantern knows that the Flash and Green Lantern cross over, have a long history of crossing over to their storylines, going back to the 1960s. I think Flash #12 in Silver Age was the Flash Green Lantern story. Are you then? Is there hinting that there's going to be a Green Lantern Flash crossover? Should we be prepared for this?
I'll listen. How much do you want to know, man? The reality is that I hope, because I'm new. Like I said, I'm new. I'm learning this all, and you betcha would I love to be able to use other characters as much as possible and do stuff. Now, I want to do that. I'm not, but right now is not the time, at least for those characters. Now, there are some other characters that I'll probably share up, but I also feel like the Flash family is really big, and I want to incorporate them over time in ways that are organic and don't feel like, oh, we've got 12 Flash people. Like I would love to, and I also have to find out who's using who and what the obligation is. Like I don't think I could use Wally. I mean, I bet I could. I would just need to talk to Tim and Cotton about, hey, could I bring Wallace in for a couple? Like there are certain characters like Bart, I have to figure out where they are in the course of the DC universe, but there are many people I would love to use and really kind of, again, I'm exploring the Flash universe through Wally's eyes. But right now in the run that just happened, you saw that I've hinted at things in the future. There's future Iris and a planet with a lightning bolt around it, and Gold Beetle and different things that I actually in my head have stories for. Whether or not I get to tell them, that's a different story. But I have stories that are kind of nebulously mapped out for a while. Yeah, as far as the Green Lanterns, I gotta find out what's going on over there. Like I said.
Now, like I said, and one thing that's great about the Flash is also must be hard as a writer. Someone who moves at the speed of light is it's hard to probably come up with villains to properly challenge a guy who can do that. And I think in many ways, people underestimate the power of the Flash. I mean, he is, when you think about it, probably one of the most powerful DC characters, and people don't even give him credit for that. But if you move at speed of light, he can do a lot of things.
Yeah, I think he might be the most powerful character. Like the more I dig into it, it's like, listen, if force is mass times acceleration, there is no one that can accelerate, like Flash. And so the question is, though, if you're running as fast as you can, like you individually, and you try to turn, that inertia and physics still apply sometimes, maybe,
right?
So, but I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. A guy with a boomerang, is he going to be much of a headache for somebody that can move that fast?
Right.
It's like so I think as a writer it is tough, but that's why I'm really adamant about making it more about pushing into other realms and dimensions, and like I said, the timey-wimey of it, and how do we have like Doctor Who adventures and have fun with those things. And then when you have a rogue come in trying to do it in a way that's like, I tried to be in my head logical about the fact that like, oh, listen, Heat Wave kicked him from behind and he didn't see it because he was just standing there, and then the fire's everywhere. So there's still cognitive functions that Flash has to use, but you try to make it as believable as possible. Like, okay, this would be a harder time, but at the end of the day, he's the Flash. And so I think even Wally has that awareness, like, I could blow through this guy and make him toothpaste on the wall, but that's not what this is about. And having that conversation, but definitely it's a challenge. I mean, I'm enjoying it, but a lot of the stories that I'm telling now aren't necessarily dependent upon that aspect.
So obviously Zoom has just introduced the I'm going to kick me out thing, that 9-minute thing.
Speed round, let's do it.
All right. So I guess what our readers would be definitely curious about knowing about is can you hint at what's happening next in the life of the Flash can you hint without spoiling what's going to happen next in the Flash?
I can say that he's going to go on another adventure, and I'm going to also explore the kids. And because I love those, I'm finding myself gravitating toward Jay and Iris, and I want to explore that a little more. But yeah, I like to take the Flash in maybe areas that, I mean, I'm sure it's been done in some ways, but like I said, the timey-wimey Doctor Who-ness of the Flash, I want to take him on adventures that maybe are, I don't know. I better stop there. That's probably good enough.
Well, I got time for, I think, one more question. So in issue 773, Wally West is given a job by Mr. Terrific.
Yes.
Now, is the job that he has is important to the storyline, or is it more important to explain for the audience how he can have a job and still be the Flash?
This is spoiler country. I am finding myself liking Mr. Terrific, and he is actually telling the truth when he says, hey, Wally, you are more than, you have a greater set of skills than to sit here and change oil. Like, I need you to come, and we're working on some stuff. That is a story that I'm cooking up.
Okay.
And I'm not there yet, but that is a story that, listen, I feel like there's going to be more opportunity for story at, the labs that Mr. Holt has than, like I said, fighting old ladies at the Jiffy Lube, the Speedy Lube, I should say. So I think there's a lot of storytelling potential, and it all, at the end of the day, if you're going to look back at 768 all the way to now, there are like little things that I've dropped that I'm like, I am talking about. There is another story that's going on. We just haven't exposed it yet.
Well, I want to say you're doing such a great job with the Flash. It was a big honor to talk with you. I'm really enjoying what you've got going with the series right now.
I really appreciate it. I really appreciate everybody's been very, very kind to this newbie, and I feel very lucky. So I just hope everybody keeps buying it. Like I said, I want it to be bought so much that they're like, we have to do this twice a month. I'll be like, yes, we do.
Well, I guess my question then will be, do you have plans for issue 800?
I mean, listen, in my head, yes. So, I've turned in next March's script. So I'm ahead.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show. Anytime you want to come back, you're welcome back. Anytime you want to talk about your animated movies or talk about Supernatural, feel free to come back and have a conversation with me.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate it.
It was a lot of fun. Thank you, Mr. Adams.
Thanks. Bye.
Spaghetti! And we're back.
That's right. We are back. Back in the saddle again. Well, I hope you guys really, really enjoyed that as much as we did making it for you. And if you like what you heard and you want to hear more, you got to go check out spoilerverse.com, because at spoilerverse.com, we have a plethora amazing directors and artists of all walks of life, and editors and writers, and oh my God, are you a lover of comic books like we are? Then there's so many amazing people from the comic book world over at spoilerverse.com, and I highly implore you to go there and check it out.
Yeah, and while you're there, you can check out all the other podcasts on our network, like Originally Geekdoms and Funny Book Forensics and Haphazard Adventures and Nerds from the Crypt and so many more.
Misery
We put out
Point Radio.
episodes all the time. Go check all of them out. And Check out all of the reviews and previews and articles we have going up every single day for you, every day on Spoilerverse.com for you to check out, to read, and to love, and to like, and to comment. We have a store link. If you want to help support the site, you can do it two ways. One, go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/spoilercountry, or go to our store link in the middle of the site there and get a t-shirt, a face mask, a hoodie, something, look fly as hell, and help support the site when you do that, because we get $1 or $2. And, maybe you want to talk to us. If you do, you can do it obviously on all the socials, but if you go to scpod.us/Discord, you can join our public Discord server and come and chat with us all day long.
I couldn't say it better myself, dude.
There you go.
You just mouthed out a ton of information at once. And really, I hope you guys enjoy what you're hearing, because we're working our butts off to bring it to you.
We are.
I guess there's only one left thing. One left thing? Yeah, I'm going to go with it. There's only one left thing left to do.
What's that?
In an oceans of podcasts,
We are Cthulhu.
as Cthulhu compels you to
Open the mind.
and read more.
Spaghetti.